Hi everybody, welcome to a beautiful sunny day in Dublin. This is my trusty Sony A6000 and this is Street Photo Diary. So in my last video I was shooting with the Fuji X-T4, and in it I pondered the question, would this replace my Sony A6000? And I never actually answered it in that video. I only realised that after the fact. Here I am, so I guess that answers that question. The Sony A6000 is, you know, it's an 8-year-old camera now, and it's still up there with the kind of the best, for me anyway, for shooting street photography. It is my preferred street photography camera. The only real downsides of the Sony for street photography, or well, really for anything really, is that the flesh tones can sometimes look a bit kind of sickly. You kind of get this yellowish greenish hue to it, but it does depend on the lighting conditions. In a nice bright day like this, it's going to be fine.
I know man passing by, life is good, best I've ever felt. Get me up, somewhere new, somewhere I can find myself. Oh, I feel so alive. As I reach out to the sky. I found my way. I was in the dark against it all, but made it through the day. Cause I found my way. In bad times, I know I'll be okay. Cause I found my way.
So I'm here in Dublin Castle today, and there behind me, that is kind of pretty much the last castle-y bit, but the compound here is actually quite nice. The buildings range from medieval, which I think the castle is, to newer buildings, and yeah, it's a nice kind of place to hang out. I'm shooting here today because it's actually kind of nice and quiet. So lens-wise, I am shooting with the Sigma 30mm f2.8, and despite being a really cheap lens, this is actually a superb lens for the Sony A6000. In fact, it's probably my favourite lens on a mirrorless camera that I own. Now, I don't own many lenses, so that's not really a big deal, but yeah, for street photography this is actually a great lens. I wouldn't mind trying the wider f1.4 Sigma lens, but as it is, this actually works great for street photography. People are always asking me about the settings that I use. So in terms of settings, I generally shoot on aperture priority, and I will keep the aperture, generally try and keep it as wide open as possible because I like a bit of depth of field. So I generally keep it between f2.8 to 4, when using the Sigma anyway. And I keep it the ISO as low as possible. I don't use auto ISO because the auto ISO on the Sony doesn't give you a lot of options and you can't set the minimum shutter speed. So I just kind of keep an eye on it. And in terms of shutter speed, I try and keep it above 200 because generally I'm walking around and you want to kind of freeze the action. You don't want to get blurry shots, unless of course you deliberately want to blur the shot, in which case you'll use a lower shutter speed. But yeah, so I don't use manual that much because here in Ireland especially, the sun will be coming and going all the time, and if you're shooting on manual you're going to be constantly metering and changing your settings. So sort of a hybrid manual auto setting that I use. Yeah, basically the idea is keep ISO as low as possible, keep the aperture as wide as possible, and keep the shutter speed as high as possible, if that makes any sense. But yeah, that's generally the settings that I use. I'm regularly getting asked for tips for beginners for shooting street photography. So here are 5 tips for shooting street photography. Now some of these are going to seem really obvious, but they're the kind of things that they might actually you might just not think about it and think that's something that's taken for granted. But if you do stop and think about them, you'll go, yeah, that's a good point. Or, you know, maybe not. Okay, so tip number 1, and this falls in the blatantly obvious category, is always keep your camera out. So if you have a camera bag, as soon as you head out shooting, take your camera out of the bag. Now, this may seem like a really obvious thing to do, but you'd be surprised how often it's a case of, I won't take it out just yet. Or you'll see something and go, nah, it's not quite worth it. But if you have your camera out the whole time, you're far more likely to want to take shots. So, tip number 2, shoot what you're comfortable with. When you're starting out in street photography, it can actually be quite daunting, and don't push yourself too much too soon. Start with what you're comfortable with and then slowly work up your confidence. So following on from that, the obvious thing is practice, 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 practice. It doesn't matter if your shots aren't great to start with, you will get better. Just kind of look at what you're shooting and see how can I improve that and how can I get better, and yeah, practice, 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 practice. So tip 3, don't make others uncomfortable. I said in the last one that you should shoot what makes you comfortable, but your shooting shouldn't make other people feel uncomfortable too. I sometimes see comments from people saying that, hey, it's my right to shoot this and it's my right to shoot that, but you know what, it shouldn't be, you shouldn't infringe on other people's personal space or whatever just to get the shot. Like, there's no point in being a total you-know-what about it. So yeah, when you're shooting, don't make others uncomfortable. So tip 4, not everything has to be people. If you're starting out and you're not comfortable shooting people, then shoot other things. There's lots of interesting things to find if you look around, things like graffiti, kind of funky objects, you know, sometimes there's like a juxtaposition of something that might, you know, make an amusing photo. So, you know, try and look for different things as well as just trying to get people all the time. Capture the kind of the funny things that nobody else notices about the city around you. finally, tip number 5, shoot scenes. So what do I mean by that? So you'll often hear people say it's all about the story. So the way I interpret that is capturing a scene rather than say just a single individual. So it'll be often a case of like a little vignette of life capturing for that whatever second. And there is a fly on my glasses. There's always something. So yeah, that's pretty much what I mean by that. Try and when you're looking for things to shoot, view the whole kind of scene in front of you rather than just focusing in on a single subject. So that's pretty much it for this episode of Street Photo Diary. I have a whole playlist of episodes of Street Photo Diary now, and it's getting to be quite a few now. And I have several episodes where I shot with the A6000 before. So if you have found this interesting, check out that playlist, and I will put a link in the description below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you have found this interesting. If you do, please like, share and subscribe. You know the drill. And we'll see you in the next episode. Okay, see you next time.